How many of you can think of something you struggled with for years? It might have been a problem in a relationship, it might have been your body, it might have been smoking, it might have been something in your work. You struggled and you said you were going to change and you didn't change it, and you were mad at yourself maybe, or frustrated with yourself, and you tried again and didn't do it, until one day, finally, something inside you clicked and you said not another day, not another hour, and you changed it. Let me give you my definition of a breakthrough. It's a moment in time when everything changes. When what seemed impossible becomes truly possible, and most importantly, you act on it. It's not just a thought, you do something with it. If we want to have a breakthrough, and the answer is it can be triggered by all kinds of things. It can be triggered by a conversation with a friend. It can be triggered by loss. It could come from having a new experience. I can think of some times in my life where I didn't even think was possible, and then I got around people who are living life so much better than I was, and I saw what was possible, and it triggered me to start to think what's possible, started me on transformation towards a breakthrough. A new challenge can make you break through because it's so difficult, you have to break through. A new emotion can break you through. It can be pissed off or excited. There's 3 keys to a breakthrough. They all start with S. And the first one that most people start on, if there's something they want to change, something they don't like, they first work on a strategy. What they want to know is they want to know, how do I do this? How do I lose this weight? How do I make this money? How do I turn around my relationship? How do I, shift myself emotionally? But when you start with strategy, you've made a huge mistake. What happens is, I call it really the tyranny of how. You don't want to get into the tyranny of how. If you're making 5% on your money, you're doubling your money every 14 years. If you're making 9% every 8 years. When you're doing, 20%, now you're doubling your money every 3 years. So I believe in strategies. I'm filled with strategies. But when you start with a strategy, you've made a mistake, because if you've never done something before and you start with how, it's overwhelming because you don't have an experience. You're like, I don't know how, I've never done this before. And even if someone shows it to you, often it won't work. Let me give you an example. Over 70% of America is overweight. The fastest growing group, by the way, of overweight people is people overweight by 100 pounds or more. That's the fastest growing group. Now, why are we so overweight? Is it because the strategies for being fit and healthy are so complex that only the wisest and smartest people can figure it out? How far would you have to go from where you are right now in your home or office to find someone who could help you lose weight, get fit, get strong? Most of you, it's within 10 or 15 minutes. In fact, many of you could hire someone to show up at your house, or you don't have any money, you could download a series of books or articles or examples. Now, don't get me wrong, if you have the wrong strategy, it's going to be terrible. For example, about 15 years ago, the cover of Time magazine was the Atkins diet. Supposedly 14% of Americans were on this one diet. And it was very effective initially, because you're eating this real high level of protein and you have this acid in your body. And you ought to know that if you have to pee on a stick because you're so acidic and your breath smells that bad, this might not be the best approach to doing this in a sustainable way. And of course, you reduce your calories, you put a lot of acid, you peed a lot, you lost a lot of weight. It didn't last, it didn't work. It's a terrible strategy. But you can't start there because it gets overwhelming and you don't even believe it. Because I'll say to someone, okay, let me show you the strategy so you can get fit and healthy. Let me show you the strategy to go from broke to financially secure to financially free. And someone who's never done it before won't even see it. They go, oh, I've already tried that. Really? How many times? How many different ways? How many different approaches? But what they'll say usually is, I've tried everything. Or they'll say, I can't find a relationship, all the good ones are gone, or whatever. The real challenge for breaking through usually is that we have the second element, a story that gets in the way. Because our story is nothing but a set of beliefs we tell ourselves over and over again. Some of you are in a really tough place. Some of you are in a great place. You just want to do better. Some are in a tough place. If you're really in a tough place, I can promise you, and I've spent my life dealing with people in the worst situations in life, and there's some people they've lost their sight, they've lost their arms, they've lost their family, and they have the most joyous, happy, amazing, extraordinary life. It is not life that controls you. What controls us is the life you focus on. In fact, jot this down if you would. Write down, I'm not experiencing life. I'm experiencing the life I focus on. Because whatever you focus on is real to you. It becomes your story. But when your story is, I've tried everything, then you don't even try anymore. You can have the answer right in front of you and not see it. I give you an example of storytelling. I remember when I was a kid, I don't know if you ever had experience like this. We were really poor, and I worked hard, and I had to go to the store, get the groceries on my bike, bring it, make the meal, put it down. I finally sit down to eat, and my mom or dad would say, get me the salt. And I'm starving, I'm just starting to eat. So I go, I don't know where the salt is. I was not lying. I didn't know the exact GPS location of the salt. And they say, you know the salt is, kid, get the salt. I was like, I don't know what it is, get the salt. I don't know, go get the salt. So I get up, and what am I saying? I don't know what the salt is. I don't know what the salt is. And I'm open the cover, and I go, it's on the second shelf. I don't know where the salt is. I look, I go, it's not here. It's not there. My dad walks right beside me, reaches right in front of my face, and goes, what is this? Well, I was telling myself a story over and over again. I don't know what the salt is, and so my eyes saw the salt, but my brain didn't perceive it. It created in psychology what's called a scotoma, a blind spot. You'll never use the right strategy if you have a limiting story. Your story says nothing works, so when I show you the strategy, oh, I've tried that, or, nothing like that works. That works for rich people. The story is the glue that gets you stuck. What you want to do is divorce the story of your limits, of your limitations, and marry the truth of your real abilities. Now, some people get a divorce and then they go visit with their divorced one over and over. Don't want to visit with your old beliefs. You just want to cut it off and move forward. Now, if you got the right story, you'll figure out the right strategy. Even if I don't show it to you, you'll find the right strategy with the right story. But your story is affected by what you should be starting with, and most people get to last, if ever. Change your story, change your life. If your story is, man, I'm always at the bottom of the pile, and I try everything and nothing ever works, and I've been through this and that, it may be true, but that's the wrong story. A better story is, I've gone through all these experiences that have made me stronger, and now I'm ready. I'm ready for the next step. Here's what I'm going to do. And that is your state, your mental, emotional state. You got to get yourself in state. If you've ever been at home and you're like this, you're like, oh man, I know, I got to figure this out. I gotta turn my life around. I'm like, oh man. In this state, you will never get the answer. When you're in a great state, things flow. Now you can change your state. The way your mind and emotion is working, that's where you want to start. You want to change this order. If I can get you in a radically different state, like you see we do in the seminars, and we're going full tilt for 12 hours a day, and most people wouldn't sit for a 3-hour movie someone spent $300 million on, and now we got 20,000 people in a stadium or 40,000 people around the earth digitally, and we're all going for it, and everybody's giving their all. In that energized state, now we can create a new belief or a new story. Now when I show you what to do, you'll do it. The state you're in affects your story. If you got the right story and you're in the right state, you have a different story about your life. You then come up with the answers, the strategies.